But if we can see that Paul loved the Lord and loved people so much and desired so much to be in God's will that he was like, don't let these guys leave. Don't let them run. We need everybody on the boat for God to do the thing he said he was going to do. Hey guys, welcome to Bible 365. I'm your host, Kathy Carter, bringing you the Bible in 365 days. I'm using a chronological Bible reading plan, and it is from the online site called oneyearbibleonline.com, where they have all different kinds of reading plans. So you would look up their chronological reading plan. You have three ways in which to get this reading plan. You can purchase a Bible that they've created in the NLT, the NIV, or the New King James. You can click on a link, which will take you right to Bible Gateway, which will show you your daily reading, or you can download a free printable reading plan, which you would just then use with your own Bible. As long as you are reading, I am very happy. If today is the first time you have ever been with me, I want you to go all the way to the end of this video. There's a 2-minute history that starts from Genesis and works its way to the resurrection of Jesus. And then from here on, I'm going to go into the history of a little bit of Paul, because that's where we are. So before I do that, today is day 340. It is December 5th, and it is Acts 27. So this is one chapter, which means it's going to be a really short one today. The past few have been really short. It's a narrative, which means I'm just telling the story about what's going on. There's not a ton of things that are hard to understand. There's not a ton of depth. I mean, there's some, certainly. I don't want to say that there's none, but I think it's relatively straightforward. So I just want to kind of help piece the story together to help you understand it the best. Okay, so we are in the book of the Acts of the Apostles. In your Bible, it's just called Acts. Maybe it's called the book of the Acts, but it's essentially just called Acts. This is after Jesus was ascended. So he died, he was resurrected. He came back for 40 days when he was resurrected. And then after his 40 days, he ascended up to be with the Lord at the right hand of the Lord until the right time where he will be coming back again. Before he left, he essentially revealed the scriptures to the apostles that were there. And it may have been just the apostles, or I can't remember for sure, but I think it might have just been the 12, actually 11 apostles at that time that he revealed all of the scriptures to them. And he told them, I want you to go out and tell everybody about me. Since then, he has, so they all went out. And then since that time, he has met with Paul. Paul was, the apostle Paul was Saul, and he was persecuting people that were following Jesus. So Jewish people that were following Jesus, he would go into their homes because he considered them heretical. He would drag them out of their homes. He would take them into prison. And when it came down to the time where they would decide, are they innocent or they were guilty, he would say that they were guilty, and then he would sentence them. He'd be one of the votes that sentenced them to death because he believed that they were against the Lord, and he loved and followed the Lord. On the way this one day to persecute people, God hit him with a light, and he blinded him for 3 days. And he said, stop persecuting my people. Stop killing my people. I am Jesus. I am the one. I am the Messiah. And he gave him a job, and he said, I'm going to send you to the Gentiles to turn them to me. So to give them my story, and then to turn, to open, I shouldn't say to turn them, but essentially that is what it is. I'm sending you out with a story of who I am because I want you to tell them the truth, so then they will follow me. Because what God wants is people to follow him. He said, I have good plans for you. I know you, I love you, and I want you to follow me. And when you follow me, I want you to do the things that I did, so then other people will want to follow me. There will be people who won't want to follow me, but I do love people and I want them to follow me. That is where we find ourselves today. So we are with Paul. Paul has preached all over the Mediterranean, and then he came back to Jerusalem, where he was originally sent away because everyone wanted to kill him. When he came back into Jerusalem, the same thing happened. He went to the temple with some other Jewish people, purified himself, and as soon as he came out of the temple, a whole bunch of Jewish people came up and started freaking out and saying, listen, you are telling people to turn away from the law, to break all the laws, to not care about the laws. And Paul had never done any of those things, but they believed all the stories. The whole crowd got riled up, and they wound up putting him in jail. So a Roman commander kept him in jail. They tried, while he was in jail, they actually wanted to kill him. So they didn't want to have they didn't want to go to court. They didn't want to hear his side of the story. They just wanted to be rid of him so they could be rid of the way, which was those people following Jesus. So he wound up being taken, because there was this plan to kill him. He wound up being taken to northern, like up and away from Jerusalem. Met with a couple of people who said, like, essentially, like, we don't find anything wrong with him, but we can't let him out because the Jewish people all around here want to kill him. And so at one point they were trying to flog him, and then they were trying to bring him back to Jerusalem to try him. And he said, no, I want to go to Caesar, because he's Roman. And so he has the ability to go be seen by Caesar. He's like, I want to go be seen by Caesar. Today is what happens when he gets taken there. So we're going to see kind of like these crazy trials and tribulations on his way to be taken to Rome and taken to Caesar. Now, I'm going to say what we know. What we know is that he's not alone. Some of his people are with him. So he is a prisoner, and there are a lot of prisoners taken on this ship to be taken to Caesar. He's one of them, but some of his people are on there as well. I believe that Luke is one of these people, because Luke consistently talks in the pronouns we, which means me and some other people that were with me. And he is the author of this book. And the reason it seems like he's the author of this book and the Gospel of Luke is because there was a point where he was with all of these believers and followers of the way, and he was helping spread the word. And so he was finding out all the stories. He was hearing all the tales. He was getting all the scoop with Paul. He was, there when Paul wrote to all of the churches. And so he had a great understanding in a very literal sense of everything that was going on. So we're starting in Acts 27. This was a short reading, so here we go. It said, when it was decided that we would sail for Italy, and again, we, which means Luke and some people, Paul and some other prisoners were handed over to a centurion named Julius. So now we've got Paul, some prisoners. Julius is a commander over them, so he's watching over them. Obviously, he has like a regiment, or a regiment, that might be too many people, but he has some like guards and stuff with him. And then there are some extras on the ship, where Luke would be one of those extras that are on the ship. And it said, we boarded a ship about to set sail for ports along the coast of the province of Asia, and we put out to sea. A Thessalonica was also with us. So somebody from Thessalonica, if you remember, Paul wrote a letter to the Thessalonians. So he was building churches there as well. So they had one of their people with them. The next day we landed at Sidon, and Julius, in kindness to Paul, allowed him to go to his friends so they might meet his needs. So Paul, yes, was a prisoner, but like, I think there was just an understanding that Paul was different. Like, he hadn't really broken any laws, and there were people people in charge that were like Festus, Felix, and they were King Agrippa at the time, and they were kind of like, I would have set him free. Like, he's not breaking any Jewish laws, and he's certainly not breaking any Roman laws. And so I can't really see why we're keeping him. And so he got a little bit of freedom on the boat. And so he got freedom to go kind of hang out, be with his people, I think eat with them. They had food together. The seas were really, really rough. So as they're going from like port to port in all these different places, nothing is going well. Nothing's going the way in which they planned. So it said, when we had sailed across the open sea off the coast of Cilicia and Pamphylia, we landed at Myra in Lycia. There, the centurion found an Alexandrian ship sailing for Italy, and then put us on board there because their first ship was done. We made slow headway. We sailed to Crete, and it said much time has been lost, and sailing had already become dangerous. It was the day after Atonement, so they had been sailing for some time. So now Paul warns them. So they're in this danger now, and Paul comes out and he says, because he's been spoken to by the Lord, men, I can see that our voyage is going to be disastrous and bring great loss to ship and cargo and to our own lives also. This is terrible. And so I can see that. And we could say he can look out there and tell, but the captain of the ship was like, let's keep going. So Paul obviously was getting a word from somewhere else, and they weren't really listening to him. And it said, but the centurion, instead of listening to what Paul had said, understandably so, by the way, followed the advice of the pilot and the owner of the ship. Since the harbor was unsuitable to winter in, the majority decided that they were going to sail on. Now, when a gentle south wind began to blow, they saw their opportunity and they weighed anchor. Before long, a wind called a nor'easter swept down from the island. The ship was caught by the storm, couldn't head into the wind, so they were driven along. Again, like we see kind of tragedy after tragedy happening on the way down here, on the way to where they're supposed to be going. He said, we took such a violent battering from the storm that the next day they began to throw the cargo overboard. So they were trying to lighten the load. So they were being like battered around. They were trying to lighten the load, probably to be able to move faster, right? Like maybe they were stuck wherever they were. And so the ship was rocking. And so they were throwing everything off, which means food. It means like any kind of provisions to be taken care of, maybe extra clothes. So they were throwing all these things off the boat. So they were left in a really bad state. When neither sun nor stars appeared for many days, and the storm continued raging, we finally gave up all hope of being saved. After they had gone a long time without food, Paul stood up before them and said, so once again, Paul, a prisoner, is taking charge of this ship. So just imagine the look of this. Like it's easy to see it on paper, but imagine like there's a centurion on the boat. He would be the head of all of these men. He would have like spears or whatever it was that he would be in control. There was a pilot, so somebody leading the boat, because the centurion wasn't necessarily the top person on the ship. He was just the top person like against the prisoners. So there were all these other people that should have been in charge. And then the lowliest of the low, this prisoner steps up and he's the one to speak to the people. Men, you should have taken my advice. Seems a little snarky, but whatever. But now I urge you to keep up your courage because not one of you will be lost. So he's like, we should have stopped before. But listen, now these things are going to come from God. Not one of you will be lost. Only the ship will be destroyed. Last night, an angel of God to whom I belong and whom I serve stood beside me and said, don't be afraid, Paul. You must stand trial before Caesar, and God has graciously given you all the lives of those who sail with you before Caesar. Think of what he's been given. So if we were to think that God just is the genie of good things, maybe they would say, because remember, he's in prison. And so maybe this God would go, listen, I'm just going to destroy everybody on this boat because they're holding you illegally. You shouldn't even be here. So I'm going to destroy everybody, wipe everybody out. And only you and the followers of the way are going to survive this ship. And then you're going to be able to just sail on and everything's going to be good. God didn't do that. God had a different plan because he has a plan for Paul. He had already told Paul, I'm sending you to Rome. So he had this plan for Paul that now, even in the midst of all this turmoil and stuff, he's putting this plan through. Now I'm going to say, because I'm a follower of the way, I believe he was giving people on this ship an opportunity because he comes out and said, he visits them on the boat. And then he says to Paul, go tell them this. And so if this miracle happens, you would imagine people on the boat would go, I am absolutely following the God that Paul follows. Like there's no doubt that Paul has some kind of miraculous things given to him by God. And so that means that there is God. This is the God, and I'm going to follow that one. Again, I would imagine that would be the point and purpose of this. He said, God has graciously given you the lives of all who sail with you. Nevertheless, we must run aground on some island. So this boat is going to be destroyed. So you're going to live, boat not going to live. It's not going to make it, which would be a big thing. On the 14th night, we were still being driven across the Adriatic Sea. And then it said, fearing that we're going to be dashed against the rocks, they dropped 4 anchors from the stern and prayed for daylight. In an attempt to escape from the ship, the sailors let down the lifeboat, pretending they were going to lower some anchors from the bow. So they're trying to get away. They're lowering this thing. They're like, hey, we're going to drop these anchors up here. But really, they were just trying to escape, get themselves on the lifeboat so they can get off the ship and get away from all the dangerous stuff that's happening. Then Paul said to the centurion, unless these men stay with the ship, you can't be saved. God told me everybody needs to be on this boat. And what I love about Paul, and in some ways, like I'm kind of jealous for this of Paul, is his discernment. Like one would go, the less people on the boat, the better. Let them take their chances. They're going to do whatever they want, right? Like, if there's the guarantee that the boat is going to fail, but the people are going to survive, and then just a handful of people want to run away, like, that's on them. But the discernment that Paul had, that he knew or believed or wanted everyone to stay on that boat to survive that disaster together, I think is like that. It's definitely, for me, like, it's just something I strive for, because I would love to have that kind of discernment to understand what's right, when, right? Because what I'm finding, and what I've mentioned to you guys, or to the camera, whatever, on so many occasions, is it is not basic instructions before leaving Earth, right? It is not an instruction manual. It is not something that tells you, make sure you do this, but don't do that. If the instructions are follow the Lord and be in prayer and repent, then yes, I would say that's basic instructions before leaving Earth. But if the instructions are, what do I do when I'm on a ship and it's shaking and rocking? Drop 4 anchors and it's going to get destroyed, but you're going to survive, right? Like this, these aren't the black and white barriers that we're looking for. But if we can see that Paul loved the Lord and loved people so much and desired so much to be in God's will, that he was like, don't let these guys leave. Don't let them run. We need everybody on the boat for God to do the thing he said he was going to do. So after Paul said this, the soldiers cut the ropes that held the lifeboat and then let the lifeboat drift away. And then just before dawn, Paul urged them all to eat. It said, for the last 14 days, you've been in constant suspense and have gone without food. Now I urge you to take some food. You need it to survive. Not one of you will lose a single hair from his head. After he said this should sound familiar to you. After he said this, he took some bread, gave thanks to God in front of all of them, broke it, and began to eat. So that should remind you of the Last Supper. And this is what he does in communion with the people. They were all encouraged and ate some food themselves. Altogether, there were 276 people on board. That's a lot of people. Like, I was thinking, 25, 30, whatever. 276 is a lot of people. So it's a lot of people to feed, and it's a lot of people to guarantee all of their safety. When daylight came, they didn't recognize the land, but they saw a bay. They hoisted the foresail to the wind and made for the beach. But the ship struck a sandbar and ran aground, which, again, is what I'm going to say that was told was going to happen. The soldiers planned to kill the prisoners to prevent any of them from swimming away and escaping. Now, here we go. But the centurion, the one that was in charge, the centurion wanted to spare Paul's life and kept them from carrying out their plan. So Paul said, everyone needs to stay on this boat. And then they were like, we're just going to slaughter all the prisoners because and to be fair, like, these centurions are in charge of the prisoners, right? So, like, what happens to the prisoners directly affects their life. So if all of these prisoners got away, it's not like they can be like, well, our ship broke up. It doesn't matter. You were in charge of them. So for whoever got away, you get punished for it, and possibly punished to death. So they were like, we're going to kill all the prisoners. So at the very least, we have their bodies and we know that they have not gotten away and they have not escaped the punishment that they're supposed to. So they're the punishment that they deserved. But the centurion didn't want to punish Paul. So he said, don't punish any of them. I assume because you can't keep from punishing one without punishing the others. So he said, don't punish any of them. Now it says he ordered those who could swim to jump overboard first and get to land. The rest were to get there on planks or other pieces of the ship. In this way, everyone reached land safely. That's where we end for today. Like, that's it. That's all I have for you guys today. So I hope it was a blessing for you. If you like this, I want you to, or if it was a blessing, I want you to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Keep reading, and I will see you guys next time. Bible is a whole book. It is not a bunch of different little books. It is, but it's successively a whole unit, and you can't necessarily fully grasp what you're reading today if you don't do anything back in the beginning. So this is where we begin our history. There was a beginning, and the Lord was in the beginning, and the Lord was the only thing, and he was there. He has no beginning, he has no end. He is a being that has created all things. He created the entire universe. He created the earth and everything that surrounds it. He created everything on the earth. He created a beautiful, perfect, picture perfect earth. And then he chose to make two humans in his image. He breathed life into those humans. And he gave them some rules. He planted them in this Garden of Eden, and he said, I want you to be fruitful and multiply. I want you to rule over the earth, and I don't want you to eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. A tempter came in and pulled them away and drew them towards temptation. So they turned away from the Lord and towards this tempter, and they ate from the tree. First her, then him, she gave to him, and he ate as well. And so since then, there has been a severing between the covenantal relationship between the Lord and his people. And since that time, the Lord has been sending people in order to bring them and draw them in back into relationship with him. Every time it was a human, and it was never able to fully bring that relationship back together. And so at a time that he decided what that time would be, he sent a human, which was fully human and also was fully himself. He was the Son of the Lord, born through a woman named Mary. His name was Jesus. And he was fully God and fully human. And he showed that he was those things by performing the signs that the prophets said in the Old Testament that he would perform all up and down the nation of Israel, turning the nation of Israel toward him. And so some followed, some did not. Those who did not built up and they crucified him. Crucified him. He was in the ground for 3 days, and then he rose again. And once he rose again and was resurrected, he then taught everyone that he was with what the kingdom of God was like, what it meant to be resurrected. And then he told them, I need you to go out and spread the message. And then he went up into the heavens with the Lord, and he sat at the right hand of the Lord. Since that time, his apostles have been going out and spreading the word all among the nations around there. They were going into Turkey, they were going into Spain, they were going into Europe, they were going into Egypt, and they were in Greece, and they were spreading all over those nations. And they were telling everybody who Jesus was, and they were sending it first to the Jewish people. And then after that, they were spreading it out to the Gentiles.